Well, thank you for joining me for another iTWire video with top Australian and international IT executives. Today I have with me Pat Devlin. He's the Managing Director of Ruckus Wireless, Australia and New Zealand. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate you having me on.
Now, before we get on to what Ruckus is, tell us about your little mascot here.
So Ruckus, our philosophy is very much different and sort of making a bit of a ruckus in the name.
Yeah.
And the dog's part of the logo, and it's we try to feature very much a dog theme in a lot of the exciting things we do.
I notice he's always barking, so
yes,
making waves, causing some noise.
Exactly. So I bring the dog with me everywhere I go.
Well, very cool, very cool. Now, so just give us the quick sort of wrap up of what Ruckus does in the networking industry.
So Ruckus is a pioneer in wireless infrastructure. Our smart Wi-Fi changes what's possible in the world of Wi-Fi. So you'll hear a lot of talk about how difficult it is in the wireless space right now, and if you're using wireless or you go somewhere and try to connect to a wireless network, it can be very challenging. There's lots of interference, lots of noise in the Wi-Fi space.
Yeah, sometimes you log on, you click on the little icon and there's like 50 Wi-Fi networks.
Exactly,
You've got to find yours, wait for your phone's hotspot to pop in there, and
So wireless is really challenging. It's a radio-based technology, and radio signals you can really just hear one at a time, and only one person could talk at a time. So there's lots of signals. It's very challenging. Ever go to the airport, turn on your device and try to connect to the wireless network? Sometimes you get full signal, try to open a browser, nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
It's a classic interference problem.
Yeah.
So we're all about building pervasive Wi-Fi networks that give you better flexibility, reliability, and performance.
Yeah.
So we have this amazing antenna array, which is what our whole product is built around, that cuts through interference. It's an adaptive array which can steer a signal directly towards a device.
So is this like multi-user MIMO antennas where it's directly targeting people's devices?
So multi-user MIMO is part of it.
Yep.
And so MIMO stands for multi-in, multi-out.
Yep.
So it's a way of getting two signals to talk at the same time. We layer our technology on top of that. So the antenna is like a virtual radar dish that kind of zooms in on your device and steers our signal. All our send and receive power is being sent in the direction that you're at. And that's something that only Ruckus does. So Ruckus has patented a technology we call adaptive antenna. And typically means for the same power that everybody else uses and sends in all directions, we zoom in on a single device, giving us better range and better interference mitigation. So fewer devices needed, and in the world of radio, fewer devices is better. So
less interference.
Exactly.
Yeah. And instead of a scattergun approach, it's like a laser targeting.
It is.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you want your modern technology to do.
Very much.
Now, I remember seeing, or writing about this with your new 802.11ac Wave 2 access points, and the video shows that there were these three antennas that look like something in a sci-fi, quite frankly. I mean, it's all internal. You don't actually see it externally, which is also cool because we used to see all those little antennas popping out of devices. So, can you explain to us what I imagine a lot of people haven't heard of Wave 1 and Wave 2. They just heard of 802.11ac. So what are the benefits of Wave 2? And how is it that you're the first ones to be out there doing it?
So the 802.11ac standard is actually quite a broad standard. And this Wave 1, Wave 2 thing, that's really just an industry thing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different aspects to 802.11ac. And the industry decided it was easier to deal with some first and some later, hence Wave 1 and Wave 2.
Sure.
There are a whole series of different technologies that are included in both, but there are a couple that really stand out.
Yeah.
So in the world of wireless, we use multiple antennas, and we've got the ability to send and receive on those multiple antennas at the same time. So effectively like multiplexing a signal. 802.11ac expands our ability to have multiple conversations.
And also, originally, and still does, delivers much faster bandwidth, many more megabits per second, or just much faster internet connection than B, G, or N.
Very, very true. Yeah. So we're always pushing the envelope as
how fast
in terms of how fast our Wi-Fi can go.
Yeah.
So in the past, and radio antennas could do up to 3 up, 3 down, and 3 simultaneous conversations. And 802.11ac expands on that and gives us 4 and 5 and beyond. Some devices have multiple antennas and could have multiple conversations with an access point at the same time. So they could talk a lot faster. So your MacBook and a lot of laptops might have what we call a 2x2 or a 3x3 antenna, allowing them to have multiple conversations at the same time.
Which means more streams of data simultaneously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that technology we call MIMO, stands for multi-in, multi-out.
Yeah. And that's part of the original Wave 1 802.11ac.
It is. So we've been able to do that for a while.
Yeah.
What 802.11ac Wave 2 brings to us is something we call multi-user MIMO. So at the past...
This is MIMO on steroids.
It is. So MIMO, up till now, has been able to only work on a single device at a single time. So if you've got a device that has 3 antennas, go you can have a very fast conversation, but 2 devices can't talk at the same time. Multi-user MIMO means multiple devices can be talking at the same time. And it's a huge advance when it comes to high density environments.
Which of course every environment is turning into.
Exactly.
So what other benefits of Wave 2 are there?
Well, so
and also, how is it that Ruckus was the first? I mean, you beat all your competitors to bring this to market.
Multi-user MIMO is the really big one. There's some other amplitude modulation issues or changes that come through that help us amp up the speed. But multi-user MIMO is the biggest one that the market will see. We got there first because it's been a huge focus area for us. So we decided the market was ready, and we've seen the demand from our customer base, and it was really important to be there first.
Now, I think one really important question is, which devices do we have today that are 802.11ac Wave 2 compatible? Do we have to wait for, the next generations coming out later this year, or are the devices we have right now that are already compatible or can be upgraded?
So there are a lot of devices out there already that are ready for a software update, which will allow them to take advantage of multi-user MIMO, and some will have to wait for new hardware to come.
Sure.
Most of Samsung's current lineup is ready to go.
Just needs a firmware update.
Just a firmware update, and it'll talk to multi-user MIMO access points. So 802.11 Wave 2, ready to go, AC Wave 2.
Yeah. So I mean, there's really nothing stopping anybody who wants to upgrade from doing it, because not only will all the next generation of devices be compatible with this, but many of the devices, if they're of the current generation, if they're upgradable, they will be upgraded, and bang, you'll suddenly have the much more efficient, for example, in an enterprise or government or school, anywhere that's using, for example, Samsung devices, they just need that update and off they go.
Exactly. So the typical lifespan of an access point is somewhere between 3 and 4 years. So if you're getting into wireless now, it makes sense to look at a 802.11ac Wave 2 compatible device, because all the new systems that roll into your network are going to be Wave 2 capable, and it'll give you options for much higher density deployments.
Now, one of the things that I forgot to mention up front earlier on was that there's a webinar that Ruckus is putting on the 7th of May, and it's all about 802.11ac Wave 2.
Exactly.
So what else will people learn there?
So we'll talk about more than just multi-user MIMO. We'll talk about all the other developments that are coming for 802.11ac Wave 2, and about the new hardware we're releasing, which is the R710 access point, which is the first Wave 2 compatible access point.
Sure. And it's a free webinar?
It is free. We'll put a link in the notes for the interview.
Yeah.
So
in the story that this video is going into, I'll have a link there, and also iTWire has all the ads at the moment. You can see them all over the place. So if you click on that, then you can register, and you know what time of the day it is? I mean, it'll be there, but sometime during the day, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's mid-morning.
Okay, yeah, which is perfectly good time for people who are at work to be learning about the latest stuff.
On-the-job training, yeah.
So, obviously, with all of this advance in Wave 2 and select current devices and future devices coming with Wave 2 built in, putting one of these things future-proofs your network for the next few years.
That's exactly right. So it makes sense. This isn't a competing standard. So when we talk to a lot of people about it, they say, oh, it's like when beta and VHS, which seems to be our industry's favorite analogy. I don't want to be the guy who picks beta because it was superior and then VHS takes over.
Yeah.
This is a ratified standard. It's where the market's headed. So it's a given that everybody's going to be releasing these access points. It makes sense to get in ahead of the curve and be ready for all the devices that are coming into the network.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not as if demands on networks are going down anytime soon. It's only just going up. I mean, even with Netflix, we see this massive load on networks. People complain their ISPs are slowing down. So, yeah, technology isn't slowing down.
Well, that's true. And look, I think one of the biggest changes that's going to happen in our market, in the Wi-Fi space, but generally in IT in the next 5 years, is this idea of Internet of Things. So everybody talks about Internet of Things, it's some vague concept.
Yeah.
But what it really means is an explosion of sensorization. So we're already seeing it now.
devices.
So we've got Fitbits on our hands, we've got watches being connected, we've got light bulbs that are Wi-Fi controlled. Everything needs a network connection, and nothing's got a wired connection anymore. So today your home's probably got 50 devices, but today my home, each of my children has a phone, a tablet, and a laptop. Tomorrow they're all going to have a wearable device, potentially 5 or 6 other controllable devices in the room, probably Wi-Fi light bulbs, all available now.
And theoretically, they'll all be running on 802.11ac Wave 2.
They will.
Yeah.
So it makes sense when my home has 500 devices that need simultaneous connection. I need to make sure that I make the most of the available bandwidth. Wave 2 is what allows me to do that.
Sure. Now, another thing that Ruckus has been well known for is helping businesses like Luna Park in Sydney, and also cities like the city of Perth, to deploy public Wi-Fi infrastructure. So, I mean, how is that business going, and how is it dovetailing in with efforts by companies like Telstra to put in their own Wi-Fi networks, which are usually designed to augment their 3G and 4G smartphones and tablets?
And it's interesting, the two business case models, very different. A lot of the municipalities that we deal with see public Wi-Fi as a utility. It's a means to offer a service to their ratepayers, to visitors to the city. And what the type of service they want to offer is very different to what a carrier wants. So as a municipality, I might want to advertise public events, I might want to make public content available, I might even want to use a wayfinding app and combine location services to show people around the city and help them find places to go. The other big thing that's happening for cities is this concept of smart city is taking over. So in the past, when a city was doing planning, they might sit a guy there with a little clicker and count, footfall traffic as it goes through. They might have a strip of rubber on the road counting people. Wi-Fi gives us the ability to start to analyze people as they move around an environment as well.
Much more accurately.
Exactly. So most people are carrying a device that's Wi-Fi enabled, even without an active connection. An access point with a sufficiently powerful antenna can see people as they move around and allow, even though it's anonymous data, that can allow a city to look at that data in aggregate and make decisions about where the best places to build a new footpath might be, or whether there's too much traffic at a given intersection, whether there's congestion in a particular area. We're even seeing cities around the world deploy smart Wi-Fi access points in light poles. So it's a power source, they're always spaced at regular intervals. What a great way to do blanketed Wi-Fi coverage.
Mesh networks. And
so when you compare that to what the carriers are looking to do, which is something very different, it's very business focused. So they're looking to do a few different things. One is to bring people to their brand. So they want competitive mobile users to come onto their network. They're looking for ways to connect people with their brand and track and add value to their network for their customers. But they're also considering ways to take traffic away from traditional networks. So if you've ever been to the football or something like that and tried to connect on your mobile phone on the regular carrier network, when you're uploading a Facebook photo of the try you just watched or whatever it might be, when there's 100,000 people on a single small cell, that's very challenging.
It's like New Year's Eve. Everyone's trying to send a message at the same time.
Exactly.
It doesn't get through for a few hours.
And Wi-Fi is a great means to offload a lot of that traffic in a very cost-effective manner. An LTE small cell is relatively expensive. A Wi-Fi access point is relatively inexpensive. So in a stadium, it's a lot easier to provide blanket coverage for Wi-Fi than it is to put loads and loads of extra small LTE cells inside the network.
And I remember when I was talking to the guys from Luna Park in Sydney, their network is capable of handling 10,000 people at the same time.
Exactly. So they hold lots of events there, which did in the past put huge stress on that network, and putting really solid Wi-Fi coverage inside the park has meant that they've been able to really open up their business and host a whole series of really interesting events. I think VMworld was hosted there this year.
That's where I was there for that.
And all powered by a Ruckus wireless network.
Well, that says a lot. So one of the other big things that you announced this year was carrier-grade Wi-Fi voice deployments, and this was just before Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. So I was just curious, what was the reaction from all the carriers that were there, and how is it proceeding since launch? So
we've always had a really strong play in the carrier space. Globally, Ruckus is the #1 supplier of Wi-Fi infrastructure to carriers, ahead of any other supplier in that space. And we've made a few announcements in this space. some partnerships working with the likes of Nokia to extend things like small cell coverage by putting wireless access points inside of that and do that offload of traffic that we spoke of. The other big thing that we announced at Mobile World Congress is Wi-Fi calling. So what we're seeing in some of the European and North American markets is carriers are looking to offload voice data onto Wi-Fi networks as well.
You're seeing it more and more.
So they've got, within the Apple operating system and within Android, there's a function for Wi-Fi calling, which the carriers can make available as they give you a handset. And that's a great way to offload traffic off the traditional voice networks and onto Wi-Fi. And it gives them the ability to then get inside buildings a lot more simply and a lot more cost effectively to deal with high congestion events, such as trying to make a call at a stadium, where it's traditionally been really difficult. And deal with those events like like you say, on New Year's in the city, really difficult to make a call, send a text. If you could supplement that with Wi-Fi infrastructure, it gives you lots of different ways out of the network.
And naturally, this would be something that an enterprise could set up and switch on as part of their own managed network.
Absolutely. So the same ability to be able to prioritize traffic is available in the enterprise space as well. We just recently announced a partnership with Microsoft for link certification. So same principle. Voice over Wi-Fi has been something that's challenged Wi-Fi networks in the past, but the world's moved on, and our ability to carry voice and carry that effectively
and seamlessly without chopping and changing.
Yeah, it's better than it ever has been.
Yeah. Well, you're calling it carrier grade, carrier class, so that's saying something.
Exactly.
Right. Well, now there's a couple of other things. There's location-based services and Hotspot 2.0. There are some of the other wireless technologies that are maturing. What can you tell us about those?
So being able to pinpoint location is part of a broader suite of functions we refer to in the analytics space. And there's lots of different ways that people are using data that they can get from mobile phones, from tablets, in combination with location. So we spoke briefly about what that's like in a municipality and how they can do what we would call footfall analytics, so watch traffic moving around the city and be able to do some planning in that space. It's also becoming very important in the retail space. So large shopping centers really want to understand the way traffic flows around their center and be able to manage their store layout and manage pop-up stores and all those kind of things with footfall traffic in mind.
And presumably location-based services gives even more accurate data than just simply tracking Wi-Fi devices. Like somehow it's even more accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is, instead of using a single access point to understand that you're connected in range, we use triangulation from multiple access points to zero in on exactly where you are in a particular location. So a really good example of that in action in a live environment is in Singapore. So in the railway stations, in the metro railway stations in Singapore, they use Ruckus access points to watch smartphone users move from point to point across the station. So we don't know who the individual is, but we see the MAC address of the device. Even if they're not actively connected to the network, if you have Wi-Fi turned on your device, we can watch you move from one end of the station to the other. And what that data is used for is for calculating wait times for trains on the metro rail. So we can see when there's heavy congestion at a particular station, and the network uses that to advise people to try a different station. But it's also used for reporting and statistics on how well they're performing. So we've seen with that data that average wait time is actually a lot smaller than public perception showed it to be. It's a big win for the users of the station. It's a big win for the managers of the station, being able to produce real live data that says our wait times are good, traffic flow is good. We're seeing more and more of that kind of usage for location services.
And with Hotspot 2.0?
So Hotspot 2.0 is a way of moving away from, for active users who want to get onto the network, of forcing you through a web page to log on, or what they call a captive portal. So there's a series of different aspects to the technology that allow both a carrier and, say, a municipality to take advantage of that and allow you to roam across their network, still understanding who you are and being able to put some restrictions on what you can and can't do on that network, but not putting this barrier between you and the network. So a mobile phone operator might like to use that, and the standard includes the ability to query a SIM card and use your SIM authentication to jump onto that network. So if my carrier has an agreement with the city, I can offload my traffic to a faster, easier to use network and not have to go over LTE as an example.
I think 4 or 5 years ago I was in Singapore and I had one of the local SIM cards there, and I logged onto a local thing, and I think it wanted me to type in the number of the SIM card, and so it knew who I was. But now what you're saying is basically that would just be automatic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So City of San Jose and San Francisco, both big Ruckus deployments, they use Hotspot 2.0, so users can roam around. And in fact, those two municipalities are looking for partners around the world, so that in theory I could get onto the network in Silicon Valley, jump off a plane and come into Sydney and automatically be connected to the nearest wireless network. And that international traveler piece is really critical. I know when I'm traveling around the world, whenever I go to China or we do a lot around APAC or Singapore, the first thing I'm doing is hunting around for a wireless network to stay connected. It's so much better if I'm able to register once and then hop from network to network without having to worry about that.
Sure, and presumably all the security things are built in there so that you're connecting to a legit network and not a rogue one, and the network knows that you're a legit user and not some hacker.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll let anyone who wants the details and obviously speak to a technical guys.
Yes, I have pages and pages on how we secure, but very secure.
Yeah. So look, just to quickly change gears, we're nearly towards the end of our interview here, but I always like to ask a question inspired by Ashton Kutcher when he came down to Australia for Lenovo, and he was always suggesting that it was a good question to ask people what was the best piece of advice that they ever received to help them get to where they are today. And so I thought, well, I'm asking all my interview subjects that question.
So mine was a really simple piece of advice,
yep.
which is just keep everything in one place. So I used to carry a notebook.
Yep.
All my notes were always taken in the one notebook, and wherever I went, those notes went with me, and I knew that everything was all together in one place. Very simple piece of organizational advice,
yep.
But it helped me a lot. Nowadays I use combination of different devices and Dropbox and all those kind of things to keep it all centered in one place, but it's still all in a single place. So no matter what happens, I know where to go, how to follow up anything I've committed to. Very easy to find.
Yeah. Sadly, my dad, who passed away last year, was a hoarder. So he had it all in the one place, but there was no organisation. so it's a very simple piece of advice, but a very good one. Very good one. Now, you mentioned a little bit before about where you thought the industry might go in the next 5 years or so, but is there any further crystal ball gazing you can do for us in regards to the next 5 or 10 years?
I do think the big change is going to be this idea of sensorization. We touched on it briefly. But more and more, we're seeing this technology get really, really pervasive across all kinds of industries that you wouldn't think of.
I mean, the Internet of Things is just still at the very beginning stages.
Exactly. So one of our customers in the southern region is a fruit and vegetables producer, and they handle all of their supply chain from end to end. And they have sensors all through where they're growing, right through to where they're packing and shipping, and then when they go to market, selling in the marketplace as well. And every one of those sensors uses Wi-Fi to connect back. So I think what we're seeing is just this density of devices. And that's probably the biggest crystal ball piece I can give, that pretty soon everything you own is going to have a Wi-Fi connection at somewhere. I think you can buy a smart shirt nowadays that'll measure your temperature and all those kind of things. So if every piece of clothing is connected, it's maybe a good or a bad thing. I'm not sure yet.
How soon before we put a Internet of Things sensor into Ruckus the dog here?
Well, he's got one in already.
Right.
But it wouldn't surprise me to hear soon that people are microchipping with Wi-Fi enabled microchips.
Yeah.
How good would it be if your city's municipal network could tell you where your lost dog was?
In real time.
In real time.
Probably they'd use it in Paris or New York, where they want to catch the people who are picking up after their pets. We can track you. Yes. So, do you have any final messages for iTWire viewers and readers, and also for your current and potential customers?
So I guess the final message would be the industry is moving quickly. Standards are evolving quickly. We talked a lot about 802.11ac Wave 2 and how fast that's kind of coming up on us. I would say people ask me a lot, when's the right time to step in? I always say once the standard's ratified, the time is right. If there's argument and uncertainty, wait for the uncertainty to be clear. There isn't any uncertainty in this space, so the time is right to jump on board. No one ever regrets having the latest standard, but I often see people look back and go, oh, I wish I'd really got into that sooner rather than later.
Well, because I would have been learning about the latest technology from the word go rather than after everyone else has deployed it.
Exactly, and given the lifespan of this kind of technology, it makes sense to be on the front foot wherever you can be. So I'd encourage people to jump on our webinar, May the 7th. It's at 10 a.m. and learn more about what it means for their organisation, what the standard means, and whether or not it's the right time for them. And we're obviously always available to have that conversation as well.
I'm sure. Pat Devlin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex.